How do you as a service professional stand out in a crowded space? In today's Marketing Mechanic video, I'm Dennis Yu, and I'm going to show you my real examples on what I've done and how to use AI to be able to get it done. So let's dig in. First thing is you need to have what we call your GCT, and that's your goals, content, and targeting. So what is it that you specifically do for a specific audience via a particular technique? I help X, my target market, achieve Y, which is the goal, via Z, which is the technique. And for me, I want to help contractors, plumbers, roofers, HVAC guys be able to generate more leads, more phone calls through our particular techniques, which is SaaS software, where I have ownership in several agencies and several software companies that get that stuff done. And so that's mine, but what is yours? You could ask ChatGPT or whoever you talk with the most. Maybe you talk with Grok or talk with Gemini and say, tell me what my specific GCT, what my goals, content, and targeting are so that I can niche down where I have an advantage, where I have the most experience, where I have the most credibility, where it has the highest income potential, such as the least amount of effort for the maximum amount of output where I can stand out among everyone else with being able to charge more, right? So you might use ChatGPT and say, assemble my knowledge base, put it into an Obsidian, for example, or however you want to store this, right? A series of markdown files. If you use Claude, your soul.md or your skill.md files. But if you're really clear on the goals, content, and targeting, then it's not enough just to have landing pages. It's not enough to be constantly reaching out and saying, hey, I'd love to book you on a 15-minute call and try to convince you that my services are better than all the other people that offer the same kind of services. I think that's just swimming upstream. It's a hard way to get stuff done. So what I like to look for is, where is the credibility? And this is not, are you good at what you do? So you could be Anthony Hilb and you're a great landscaper, climbing trees, doing quotes, servicing the neighborhood. I'm not asking whether you are good at what you do. I'm saying, do you have the credibility, the perceived expertise, not the actual expertise, like a surgeon or a mechanic. Like when you look for a surgeon or mechanic, you don't actually know unless you're a mechanic or surgeon yourself, but there's other factors like reviews, what your friends say. That's what I mean by the credibility. And credibility comes from who is saying it. So if you have this, what you stand for, who exactly you serve, the result that you achieve, where is the credibility going to come from? I think the most important one is who already is credible. I spent today with George Leith. George Leith is probably the top guy in the world of sales in digital marketing. He was a co-founder and chief revenue officer at Vendasta, grew that to a few $100 million, and I was on his podcast today. So who has done the thing that you want? Marco Cipolla is a buddy of mine. He's grown his SaaS company from nothing to 300 customers. So by associating with him, that shows that I'm credible, where he says something good about me. And you can Google it or ask ChatGPT, what has Marco Cipolla said about Dennis Yu? What are all the podcasts we've made, whatnot, right? So you might have 3 or 4 of these people that you know. And I want to be known as being good at advertising, for example, and being able to produce videos that convert. So yesterday, Carson Teagard and I, we were with Sean Cannell. Sean Cannell is one of the top guys in teaching people how to grow a YouTube channel. So we interviewed him, and we take that and we chop it up into lots of clips. So for each of these, we have a podcast. And a podcast is nothing more than a long form way of capturing. In other words, how do I capture 45 minutes of content in one block that I can then chop up, use in different ways, and cut it up into YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Facebook posts, Google Business Profile, Twitter, which is now called X, blog posts. Some people, they TikTok or Snapchat or LinkedIn. And what's happened now with AI tools, if you see the interview that I had with the product folks at Descript at NAB 2 days ago, then we talk about how the AI can take this and be able to repurpose it, chop it up, turn it into all kinds of derivative content. And this is the Mexican food analogy. Beans, cheese, rice, lettuce, ground beef can be a burrito, a tostada, an enchilada, a chalupa, a chimichanga. It can even be a book. It can go to iTunes. It can go to Spotify, right? These are all just different ways of chopping up this. You've heard of repurposing before, but you probably haven't been doing it because you thought that you needed to hire a VA or a video editor to do this. But not anymore, because the breakthrough in the last 3 months with agents is that you have an agent that comes in, like a VA, like what a VA used to do. We've been doing this for many years. Is as long as you have this real, actual content, this actually exists, real video, not generated stuff, not AI video, whatever, but real stuff like this off of my iPhone that you're watching. This is not fake, because I would be skinnier, I would have more hair, I wouldn't stutter, I wouldn't have pauses like that. And then, so we use tools like Descript, and what's so meta, SCRIPT, is that when I interviewed the folks at Descript, not only are we showing, here's how you use Claude. Claude controls Descript, so we don't have to log into Descript. Claude can log into WordPress. Claude can log into HubSpot. Claude can log into Google Ads and do all these things. So now we have our agents coming in here, and they're doing everything from here forward. So all we have to do is find a way via Zoom or in person to record videos with these people that are topically strong at sales, at roofing. So Brad Strawbridge, we recorded a podcast with him, or video, Sean Cannell. What are the different topics you want to be known in? And if you're not sure what this should be, then go to Grok or ChatGPT or Gemini and say, based on Dennis Yu's topic wheel framework, what are the topics that create the most credibility, which is perceived expertise, for my particular goals, content, and targeting? The result that I drive for a particular customer base via the particular technique that I have. What proof do I have? And so the who is the proof of, because you're associated with these people who, as part of a podcast, they will say, as George said at the beginning of the podcast, I've been friends with Dennis for 14 years. If that wasn't the case, then I wouldn't be where I am, and blah, 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 which is awesome. It sounds douchey for me to say that, but you can watch the clip where he says that. So when you are associating with these other people that have achieved success in these different areas, and you're not asking for compliments, you're not trying to say, hey, say good stuff about me, or what's it like working with me, or what kinds of results have you? No, you're interviewing them, and as part of it, naturally, these things will come through, and the AI can listen for that if it knows how to do that. So the who is the most powerful, because people make decisions based on who their friends are associated with or who they value as experts in those particular areas. And asking these people to be on your podcast is so easy. Most people, they just don't do it. I asked Steve Sims, how did you get Elton John and Sir Richard Branson and Elon Musk as friends, where you're hanging out with them during Christmas parties and at their homes and whatnot? And he said, simple, I'm a London bricklayer, and all I did was ask. And we have example after example. George Palatichuk, 22-year-old, living in the dormitories, started a roofing AI call center. And I said, make a list of these roofers that have done $10 million plus, who are successful, so they can use your, even if they're not customers. And 10 out of 10 all said yes. You can see the episode where we talked about that. So the who is the most powerful one of all of these. But the other piece that you want to be able to back up is the what. And the what is the result, which is how Brad Strawbridge drove $10 million in sales in the first 2 years of starting Capital City Roofing. And then there's a lot of what content. What was the result, right? What was the thing that you did? What was the thing that someone else did? And then you break it down into the how. How did they do that? They followed this checklist. They watched the weekly Marketing Mechanics series, where you can see these are not just concepts. You can see we put this into practice. I'm using examples from the last week. This is real. Tomorrow I'm flying to Milwaukee to be with Ethan Vandehei, who runs the digital marketing at Infinity Roofing and added an extra $30 million last year to the largest roofer in Wisconsin. Real proof. I've known him for 7 years now, I think. And then the how is how did you do it? So you start with the who, the most important part. That naturally leads to, in a podcast, so what was the result that you did and how did you go about doing it? And that naturally goes into this sort of details where you unpack that. And I think this is a natural flow because people, your how, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you could have a book on how to do the thing. This is how, as a professional, you can make 1-minute videos, not singing and dancing, not because you have big muscles, but showing your expertise in 1-minute chunks. How do you do that? This could be correct, but who's going to read this book? Only if they trust who it is first. So the perceived authority, the credibility, starts with who, then it's the result. So I trust that person drove a particular result, this is how they did it. And this credibility mapping happens in a podcast naturally if you ask the AI to map this out for you. So if you have this in these 45-minute to 1 hour long videos, then all of this is naturally done. It's ridiculously powerful. People, when they record a podcast, they might not know how to introduce a guest to set the energy really high. Caleb Williams knows how to do this better than almost anybody. Mark Lack is probably at that same level, where in the beginning, they say, hey guys, today we have a really special guest. Caleb Williams is a good friend of mine, this and that, in terms of specifics that we've done together. And I'm just so honored that he's here because he's achieved this and this. And if you are this kind of person and you want to achieve this kind of result, you're going to want to listen to how he achieved that, right? And so we've already laid out the goals, content, and targeting, and maps to that person's credibility, the company that they're at, and therefore reflects back on you. This concept, I cannot overstate how important that is in the world of selling high-ticket services. And this is true if you're a roofer or a landscaper or anybody that's selling services, to be able to stand out from all the other HVAC guys in Dallas, right? All the other AI digital marketing agency guys that are selling stuff and hitting you up in Instagram and LinkedIn saying, hey, I can do AI this and that. Okay, all the other million guys that can do AI now are AI gurus. Show me that you've done it, right? Okay, so if you have this podcast, you know how to introduce people, you follow this kind of framework, which ChatGPT or Grok or your favorite Claude, whatever, can prepare you on how to do that, then you have a natural conversation that has great energy that can be clipped. And then at the end, you want to record I'll call it a promo. And this is, so most people, they end the podcast by saying, hey guys, that was a great episode. Ethan Vandehei, how can people find you? Oh, you can find me on YouTube. It was great having you on the show. We'll catch you guys in the next episode. And they cut that. No. You want to say at the end, when you're about to end it, you say, Ethan, tell everyone, why is this show worth their time? Now that you and I have spent an hour together, tell everyone. Say, if you're a roofer and you are fed up with your last 3 digital marketing agencies, then this is worth your time because we cover this and that. And so that you can think of this as like a trailer, but you record it at the end because you've already had the conversation, you record at the end, and that's what causes people to watch, because you could have an hour-long conversation, and if you just start with, oh, it's cloudy outside, and oh, good job on the LA Lakers or whatever it is, and oh, how are you? How's your wife doing? Who's going to want to sit through that? They don't even know what the rest of that, are they going to commit 45 minutes? Even if it's someone they trust, if it's someone they don't trust, and people open with this sort of like polite, how are you doing? Or it opens with a bumper because you have a video editor that made this like flying text thing with your logo and playing some music. That's just wasting time. Get right to it in the first 3 seconds, which I hope I did for you, which if you're watching now, I want to honor. How do you stand out? How do you build an authority engine? How do you leverage these frameworks that we're talking about based on real experience that you see me having done in the last week, proving that this is working, proving that we are driving clients, proving that we're training up young adults to use AI tools in their parents' businesses or to start an agency to do that for other landscapers, right? So if this is coming out here and all this content is mapped back to the topic wheel, and it maybe even ties back to your knowledge base, which by the way, you should have, whether you call it a knowledge base or a content factory or whatever you want to call it, the more information you have here that ties back here, where you have a stronger and stronger, more, look at episode 1 on entities. And out of our 36 episodes, I talk about how all this information keeps getting structured back. Every time you have a win, every time someone leaves you a good review, every time you meet someone that's interesting, someone in your neighborhood. Maybe it has nothing to do with being a roofer, but it's someone that you respect, someone who you play golf with, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be some long, deep thing. It can just be one piece of advice that you learned, right? That enhances this knowledge base. It anchors you to the specifics of what you say that you do. So it's not AI generated. The way to get past, or not be drowned by all the AI stuff out there, is to have real experiences that you're sharing. Today we were in the Bellagio. Carson Teagard and I were with George Leith up on the 24th floor from his suite, and we filmed. We could see the Bellagio fountains and the Paris in the back, and that's a real experience. Tomorrow I'm flying to Wisconsin to see Ethan Van Dyke. And in 2 days, I'm going to LA with Dan Liebrandt, and we're going to go to China and visit a bunch of factories and see how robots are made. And that, like, those are real things. That's not an AI generated thing. You can see that there's proof of that, right? And so all of this cycles back to real proof. Real EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, trust. If you haven't seen that, we've got articles and documents and skill files on how to do all that. Okay, so let's say you have all of this. Then you probably know about dollar a day. This is the thing that I'm most famous for, and most people still don't get this. So let me explain in a way that I think, because people think, oh, it's just micro-targeting, or it's just putting small budgets for small businesses. This won't work for me because we do this B2B industrial HVAC equipment. No, it works. So the more boring your business is, and the more you have this, the more dollar a day works. If you have good ingredients, then the oven, the grill takes good quality steak and makes it better, right? Instead of raw. So how does this work? The top sales guy in digital marketing, George Leith, we create these videos, chop it up into different pieces. Then what I do is I speak to Claude, or you can speak to whatever your favorite one is. And then while I'm in YouTube or Instagram or the blog, I'll give the context of what's going on here. This is a podcast where George Leith and I talk about how people who have run a lot of programmatic media need to adapt using AI tools. How the yellow page type category folks need to move into social media, or need to move into beyond selling off the rate card, or how SSPs and DSPs, which are for the large guys that spend a lot of money, are collapsing down because the margins are not as good as they used to be. What do they do about that? So we're talking about that for big advertisers, right? And they should work with AdCellerant. AdCellerant can cut out all the middlemen along the way, and you can save 30-40% on the cost. We can do a side by side. Let's look at what you're currently spending money on and how much you're paying, and for the exact same inventory, by cutting out the middlemen, we can do it for cheaper. Why wouldn't you? So we're talking about that, but how do and let's say we make YouTubes and shorts and Instagram reels and blog posts and all that organically, but is anyone going to see that? Probably not, because we're not trying to be Mr. Beast. So what do? We dollar a day. So I speak to Claude and I say, here's the context. I'm with George Leith. We're talking about programmatic advertising for guys that spend more than $250,000 a month, because they're running over the top, they're running all kinds of stuff, right? More than just Google and Facebook ads. So target people who are big spenders. Target people who are using Criteo or DSPs or SSPs or are spending a lot of money on Google Ads. Where might they be? Find lateral targets. So when I say lateral targets, then it knows, oh, I should probably target the National Association of Advertisers. I probably should target different organizations, different tools that are only used by enterprise companies, not by consumers, not by small businesses. And that's how I get these micro targets. So there's literal targets, there's lateral targets, and there's custom audiences. Custom audiences are your remarketing pixel for people that have been to the site, your email list, people that have watched a video on YouTube or Facebook and now they're in that retargeting pool, right? Because then you can serve based on wherever they have seen your stuff. But it could be as simple as, so if we have done something, which we have, with various people in roofing, then I'll say, okay, who are these other people in roofing? So we target Brad and his friends. Brad's also connected in Atlanta. He's also connected with the, I think it's called the Roofing Alliance. It's a nonprofit that is bringing up the next generation of roofers. And I could target Roofing Con, Roofing Process Con, the big conference for all the roofing folks that are coming in. I could target Lance Bachman. I could target customers of Service Titan. Like, you see how that works? So each of these audiences, I could spend $1 a day because this might only be 1,500 people and this might be 2,500 people. So each of these targets, if someone's going to watch a video on how home service businesses use video to make the phone ring, plumbers, HVAC, roofers, that's a narrow audience. This is not for any random person who wants to start a cooking show on YouTube. No, I'm very specific because it ties back to this. If you are niche here, this naturally ties into these micro targets. And if your Claude or whatever you're using has the context here, then it goes into agent mode and you literally speak to it. So in our weekly Thursday morning is when the whiteboard video comes out. Thursday evening is when we get together live on our laptops and we show what each of us has done. I demonstrate by example. So I'll teach the concept, but it's based on real experience, what I've done in the last few days, and then I literally log in and I show all the stuff. And showing all the stuff now is really just speaking it. So a lot of you guys maybe have seen me where I'm speaking to the AI. Each of these things, I'm speaking for 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and I'm giving it context on what's going on here. I'm referencing what skills and experience is necessary. I'm showing how this content, how it maps to other related pieces of content, just like I'm talking to another team member. I don't treat it like a piece of software. I literally treat it like a person. And therefore, I'm not going to be obviated by all these AI agents because I'm already treating them as humans. I'm polite to them. And then they can work in teams. I can swap out different agents that are doing different things along the way. Hey, that proposal is pretty good, but can you make sure that you tie in the call tracking and the Roof 360 CRM that they're using, and make sure that we're focusing on the 5 markets that they told us that they really wanted to cover, especially because this other agency goofed up here. We need to come fix this other piece. Like, I'm giving it context. I'm speaking it. And every step along the way, like with Descript, I'm speaking to Claude, and Claude's a VA basically, and using these skill MD files, which we publish, you can actually Google them, say, hey, Dennis talks about all these skill MD files as part of the Content Factory process, which is what this whole thing is, Content Factory. Where are the skilled MD files? Can you reference them? And you'll see that we have a web page for every single task. Shows how to do it, shows what the ingredients are, shows what the skill MD file is, shows a QA checklist for every single task. There's 1,000 of them. And they're free. You can take them. You can use your own. You can use ours. You could use any random skill files you find on the internet. I wouldn't recommend that. You could just say, go do this thing here without referencing how to do that. Good luck with that. You're going to get something random. You specify how you want it done. You say, according to how Dennis Yu teaches in the content factory, or does dollar a day, or uses Descript in a certain way, or whatever. If you say according to how, that's what I mentioned in last week's video. Go back 1 week and see the marketing mechanic on how you turn knowledge into tasks, into repeatable skills that are documented in this way. And now you've got a beautiful closed loop cycle, because as these ads are running, they're generating signal. These targets are working. Maybe this Brad Strawbridge target's working. Maybe our custom audiences on the website are working. Maybe people who go to this particular conference is working against this particular set of videos or whatnot. I like to have every Friday, every team member has to produce what I call the MAA report, Metrics Analysis Action, which is just an ongoing optimization cycle. The metrics then lead to the analysis, which means this is what we learned, why something worked or didn't work. Not just like this number is higher or lower. That doesn't tell me anything. I want to understand why. And then action. What do I do? We need to do more stuff like this, or we need to adjust this, or YouTube Shorts is doing really well. Whatever it might be. Oh, our email sequencing or the landing page has a problem. Whatever it is, that's what a digital marketer should do. A real marketer that's not worried about AI is using AI to put together most of this at a first level. And so these agents, every Friday, they run through all of this and they produce a report. We happen to use Basecamp for our project management, but some people like ClickUp and Asana and Monday, I don't know, whatever it is you like to use for project management. But have the discipline, weekly cycle. It can be done by AIs or VAs or whatever you want to call them, but supervised by a human. I consider myself the conductor of the orchestra because I've played every one of these instruments. You can see tons of videos. I've demonstrated, like I'm actually logging in and adjusting things, and even today, I still like to keep my skills sharp. But that then allows me to train up these workers that have associated skill files to keep improving. And last week I talked about this recursive loop where as these agents, as these tools are using tools, basically, like we don't have to log into WordPress anymore. We don't have to log into any of these other systems. The AI tools, these smarter tools are, which is called the harness or the orchestration or MCP, which is the connecting, are using all these other things that we used to log into. And now they're evaluating if they have conversion data, revenue data, lead data, then they can optimize towards a business result instead of just putting content out there or optimizing for engagement, which doesn't necessarily, you're just gonna, if you optimize for engagement, put out cat photos or something, cute babies. That's engagement, doesn't drive leads and sales, it's not relevant, doesn't tie this, doesn't drive the credibility. But if you give it this context, this is organized the right way, you anchor with high authority, long form content, that's the best thing to chop up. This whole cycle works for you. The system is learning, it's then giving you feedback on what you need to do. And now, the smarter the AI gets, the larger your advantage becomes. You grow your authority because the AI is just an amplifier of who you are, your relationships, what you have actually done. And the other people that are just generating stuff or talking about the latest OpenClaw, latest AI this and AI that, but they're not actually doing stuff that's real, they're going to be left behind. Even if their videos look real, sound real, but the AIs are smart enough to tell whether there's real experience or not. I know this because I've had plenty of meetings with Google. We've talked about this, and this is where things are going. The folks who are smart, who are skating to where the puck is going, know the relationships and experiences and things that we have, especially with home service businesses, funeral homes, where the relationship actually being with people is so key. AI is actually going to help us. And the people who are preaching AI, ironically, are the ones that are not going to make it. So I'd love to hear. What do you guys think? I'm Dennis Yu. I'm your marketing mechanic. We'll see you guys in the next episode.